Good morning. Thank you for showing up here Sunday morning for the second day of the Educational Web Symposium. There's a number of things, a couple of changes also to the program today. One in particular, Sofia Olascoaga's talk yesterday, Symposium, has been moved till today at 5:15. It's not on the program online, but please do stick around for her as the last contributor to the symposium today. Please also note that Ada's performance will be starting shortly. Ada, as part of Chto Delat's School of Emergency, that performance will be going on all day, weaving together the material constituents of their contribution to the show, the Educational Web. Then there's also the appropriations that might be useful going on today as well by the entrance here on this floor. And Lisa Domstreich will be continuing her spot tour throughout the breaks today. Here, my thanks goes to Agnes Fabich, Markus Haas, and Lennart Jensen as well, who were part of this seminar at the HFBK, which enabled that program. Also, special thanks here to Nora Sternfeld. Without much more ado, I'd like to give over the word to Nick, who will introduce me, you, and Dmitry Vilensky from Chto Delat. And Olga, is she coming? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. So we're very pleased to have Dmitry and Olga now living here in Hamburg, which happened during the last year. No? When did you come here? March. And today we have both of them speaking with me. Just a short introduction. So the collective Chto Delat, which is what is to be done in English, was founded in early 2003 in St. Petersburg by a work group of artists, critics, philosophers, and writers with the goal of merging political theory, art, and activism. The artistic activity is realizing across a range of media, from video to theatre plays to radio programs and murals. This includes art projects, seminars, and public campaigns. In 2013, they initiated an educational platform called the School of Engaged Art in St. Petersburg, which was run from the Rosa House of Culture. Since September 2022, Chto Delat initiated the School of Emergencies, which was the transformation of the previous school, which is a transdisciplinary roaming educational initiative for artists, writers, researchers, and activists. The urgency of this school was created by the wars in Ukraine and the waves of political refugees leaving the former Soviet states. They are in discussion with Miyu, who is a professor of art and economies at the University of Kassel and the Documenta Institute. Prior to joining the University of Kassel, she was research associate in the Media Art and Media Studies Department at the Academy of Media Arts Cologne. Her academic interests are new and historical materialism, performance philosophy, as well as the history, political theory, and philosophy of Eurasia. She works with the Silk Road. She works at the Silk Road as a figuration for reimagining networks and has curated exhibitions and programs at Asia Culture Center in Gwangju, South Korea, Ulaanbaatar International Media Art Festival in Mongolia, Zaya CCCA at Vladivostok, and the research curatorial platform Unmapping Eurasia with Bina Choi. So thank you very much and look forward. We have another one. Yeah.
Yes, I stay in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yes, whatever you want.
It's my jacket. You get the nice chair. That's also good. It's the best.
And can I also?
Sorry, coffee.
Your cooking.
Coffee is very important.
Yeah. You hear? Yeah. Okay. It's okay? Yeah. I just want to say that parallel Ada Abdrushevich start her performance making a web it will be inside our installation behind. So you watch it anyway, it will continue 6 hours. So till the whole day, it's kind of endurance performance also. So you will see. It's also announced in the program. So thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming at this early morning when the weather is actually quite nice. I'm thrilled to be conversing with Olga and Dmitry about mainly the transformation, right, from the School of Engaged Art to the School of Emergencies. But maybe for those who have not seen the show, I think you will recognize earlier moments of their trajectory in the works. So, for example, as Nick already introduced, the Rosa House of Culture, right, loosely modeled on an idea of a Soviet Dom Kulturel, a culture house that you can see in the work. I'd also like to flag that back in 2014, the collective withdrew your participation at Manifesta 10 in St. Petersburg at the event of the Russian military intervention and the annexation of Crimea. So I think, obviously your political activism goes into the very DNA of the collective, and it will be good to first maybe hear you introduce your work at the School of Engaged Art and this transformation to the School of Emergencies.
No, we have this one. Maybe I'll take like this, it would be more comfortable. So thank you, Mi, for mentioning that. Actually, it was a very dramatic moment in 2014 because we have made different experimentation with pedagogy in the form of temporary project like summer schools or seminars or something like that. And more in general, we permanently kind of demanding that actually the value of our work, it's not institutional success, not market, but educational value. That's how through watching the films, participating in our learning place or seeing performances, people can get a little bit of that transformation of consciousness and subjectivity. But at the same time, because maybe it makes sense to speak in that general context of that art and education, and then you better understand our kind of situation, which used to be in Russia, there are no kind of institutional education in contemporary art. There are academies which are very, and now become ultra conservative, where you can just learn some kind of craft, so how to paint in realist tradition, something like that. So academy in the sense of that composition of critical tradition and modernity, so kind of modernism is not existing. That's why whole education is happen as kind of self-organized process. Like many artists of particularly, it's also intergenerational exchange. So people of my generation, other like Osmolovsky, Stas Shuripa, many others started different self-organized initiative and start that kind of school. Some of them have different program, different curriculum, but at the same time, it's kind of usually crash course into that, whatever we call contemporary. And it's also a big difference between what is possible, what is not, and actually also referring back to Nora, because actually our House of Culture and school could be clearly describe what Nancy Fraser would say about counterpublic. So it's absolutely something should be protected from society which not accepted them, like LGBTQ plus issue, when they very celebrated somewhere in the West, in Russian situation, in other situation, in Iran, you can't do it openly. So you have to really walk in a very clandestine way. And make that kind of safe, but at the same time brave spaces. So yesterday it was also very interesting talk about what is safe. But I think for us it was always combination, because nothing is safe, and actually going safe, you also have to be brave in certain situations. Maybe in US campus it's different, but somewhere in Iran or in Turkey or in many other places, in China, maybe you give us a proper example, it's actually you have to be really brave. Especially right now in the situation of war and anti-war activity, which maybe we'll talk later. So, but our first possibility to realize kind of school in a more kind of durational way, like 2 semesters, like not just 2 weeks or 1 seminar, it happened only 2013, because, you know, it lacked certain resources and money, so, and actually also situation. So, and unfortunately, you know, it almost coincided. So it was aftermath of that winter protest of 2012, where most of our participants was very kind of politicized, but at the same time frustrated. You can see it, it's actually in our films, The Excluded, at the Moment of Danger, which exactly depicts that certain moment in the history. So I would say that from the very beginning, our school permanently operated in a situation of emergency. So there was no normality. So not situation where you learn kind of critical art practices or community art and something like that, and then go into that big institutional world where your achievements would be celebrated. Not at all. That was actually our permanent problem, that you actually educate people who might move to the West, which most likely, but at the same time, it was not so simple, and it's very complicated now. And then what they do, but at the same time, this demand for this knowledge and creating that counter public sphere was so present and so urgent. That's why we felt it's like kind of a mission. So no one commissioned us to do a school, you know, it was just our decision. And then, yeah, so, and then we get in that kind of trapped into that manifest situation, because then it goes to extreme, you know, because actually we were invited, we were only, Gasper Koenig invited us as the only artist from Russia, so to say, and especially from Petersburg, because Manifesto was in Petersburg. And then we have quite dramatic respondents, because we take Gasper, we can't do it like that. So that business can't go as usual. And then Gasper was quite, how to say, softly. So, but it was actually, it was open public communication of that, open letters. So he told that he's not allowed to manipulate by political issue that high art things. So at the same time, he involved something, some important project, but anyway, it runs. If you like, we can talk more about it, but not now. And then the school war, so we made kind of alternative project during Manifesto, where we also trying to collaborate. And those moments, it was possible because we did a project, maybe it was one of the most risky things in our life. We did collaboration with the School of Kiev. And then inviting in June 2014, 20 people from Kiev to St. Petersburg. That was really a challenge, because you don't know, you could be arrested at any moment altogether, because everyone was considered. It was, yeah, Lada was actually a participant of that project. So right now she doesn't like to remember that. So, yeah, so it was, and then it evolved through more kind of, so to say, peaceful time to that extreme situation of 2022. And yeah, I don't know, it's a long story. Actually, there was also the book, The School, published by Sam Thorne, how you pronounce Thorne? Thorne, yeah, from UK. And it's also talk about histories of different schools, 5, 6, 7 stories. So I really recommend. And actually in this publication, there is a long interview, I don't know, maybe 20 pages of my discussion with Sam about that kind of story. So,
thank you, Dima. You remind me the beginning of our school, and it was really important time. But you know, our first generation, because we started our school in 2013, and we had several months when everyone were full of energy, and we had very strong desire to change everything. It looked like everything is in our hands. Several months, but then the war in Ukraine started, was February of 2014, and we were like, wow, absolutely frustrated. And from that time, and our school, what is another important thing is that our school appeared with the idea of collectivity, because in 2013, our group, Chto Delat group, was already pretty old group. We were 10 years old. That's like good age for the group. And we decided that what we can teach, of course, from the beginning, it was not the idea to teach someone. We were not like teachers and students. We were more like participants of one project. And but the idea was that we can share our knowledge, how to do something collectively, how to live collectively, how to be. And from the very beginning, our group was like a family. And then we continue this family idea in our school. Sorry, yeah. 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 Thank you. And so, and collectivity, from the beginning, we had an idea that all together we can resist and we can change this world, you know, yeah, but then we realized that we need collectivity just to live, just to survive, not to resist. It's just a great idea, but we have to be together, otherwise we cannot survive. And now I'm so proud because we really investigate our efforts, our time for this, you know, and now we have kind of method how to do it, because it's 10 years we were doing such things. And now I'm so proud that a lot of people from our school now in Germany, they had possibility to move from Russia, because we are like a family and we support each other, and they have this humanitarian visa as we have, and yeah, and we continue our school now, because our school, I repeat, it's a kind of family, and we based everything on this support. But of course, we are older and we have more possibility to support our people, but yeah.
Maybe you can introduce a bit what exactly are you guys doing under the name of the School of Emergencies? We can also put on the slides if you want.
You know, we decided not to show because actually it's already quite heavy installation behind, which was yesterday was a tour, and you can watch many things. But, you know, for us, it was still very uncertain moment. So maybe we need to ask the advice of the audience, maybe make a poll, because actually, you know, before it was very clear, because right now, it doesn't matter much what you're doing. It matters who you are, where do you stay. And actually, before it was quite clear, it was collective with open leftist agenda from St. Petersburg, mostly interdisciplinary, in a kind of dissident mode from Soviet time against Putinism, creating kind of alternative civil society, depends on whom you talk, maybe counter public sphere, whatever. And then you can go wherever. You can go to New York, you can go to Lisbon, and everybody understand who you are. And then it's like you move on two legs. You know, one leg, like everyone has international one leg is local, but then one leg is cut. So right now you jump on one leg, you know, And it's nice, as Olga said. It's glucose there? No. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I thought it's one member of our collective there, but it was far away. Anyway, so, and you jump on one leg, but when you have many one leg, it's a little bit more easy to move as a kind of, as a pack, so to say. But School of Emergency, as I said, it was actually not new. And actually, I would say that maybe compared to other school and initiative, we have from the very beginning quite, I wouldn't say not pessimistic, but, again, nor again, referring to Gramsci. So we have pessimism of consciousness and optimism of the will. So we are always doing something, but at the same time, consciously, we understand the state of the world as a quite bleak and gloomy and very kind of apocalyptic landscape around. And actually, we are not new in this vision, and we always been inspired by Benjamin with his quite negative and then at the same time messianic kind of approach to reality. And for us, state of emergency following literally Benjamin is not an exception, but a rule. So it's not something that happened in February or 2014 or I don't know when to 1914. So it's a lot of change of that disasters. And for us, that politics of actualization, how you rescue certain potentiality in the past, completely repressed, forgotten. That for us may be one of the missions for artists, and actually which allow you continue your work and move further. At the same time, maybe we are also, because in our group we have not only artists, we have philosophers like Oksana Timofeeva, Artemy Magun, Alexei Penzin, we have poets like Alexander Skidan, also our generation, choreographer Nina Gasteva. So it's kind of interesting combination of different visions and different kind of professional background, which allow you to get into many situations and really, how to say, reveal that certain meanings which might appear or might be, should be invented and bring into that kind of historical moment. But at the same time, I think we may be compared to whatever we call that kind of optimistic and kind of pink vision of situation. We have more that kind of black negativity inside us. And right now also maybe we have that certain kind of complicated relation with art world, because actually that certain negativity right now looks like it's not so welcoming. So because people really, even, when we could discuss that document, we have different approaches, but for me, it was actually one of the project realized in the moment of catastrophe, 2 years of COVID, no possibility to do research, no travel, then the war. But at the same time, you come to exhibition, of course, you see a lot of historical work about different crises, but general spirit was actually trying kind of avoid that certain kind of dark situation. So it was, let's celebrate. So let's get together, make friends, but at the same time, not really. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, but just wanted to add about document, because I'm sure that they show us the time after catastrophe, how we can survive after, when everything is already done. What should we do in this situation? It's not about criticism, that's like how to survive. And I started to think about our, let's call it, mission. Because of course, who we are, artists from Russia. We are from Russia, and this is why it means that we have this habit. We know what does it mean to live in Russia. But Russia now becomes more and more a country of absurdism. It is full of absurdism. And I should say that historically it was like this. And we, Dima and me, we spent our childhood in the country full of absurdism. Soviet Union, yeah. So we know something about how to live in such situation. But now it looks, but even for us, the war in Ukraine is a little bit outrageous. Even for us, it's like, no, we could not understand what is going on, but we try to do it. And we think that we have such an tool, we have some tools how to understand what is going on. But unfortunately, this absurdism now spreading from our country all over the world. And you see, guys, how a lot of things now changing. And what we had, for example, simple example about pacifism. Just 2 years ago, to be pacifist was like nature for normal human being. Do you remember that anti-war movements and such things? Especially, sorry to say, in Germany, yeah? But now, when you say I'm a pacifism, it's immediately put your position under the question. What kind of pacifism? So things are changing, and in very, very absurd way, I should say. And this is why maybe, sorry, I just finished. And maybe for us, it's very important to work with this. And we started, to be honest. And we already have our program with the name Mad Tea Party. It's from Alice in Wonderland. It's kind of example of absurdism. And maybe we can, as an artist, we can, maybe we can, how we can show you how it works. Maybe we can share with you our experience, and maybe it can be useful for you guys.
This is basically touching on something that I think is really, really inconvenient. Namely, the question, while you guys are, of course, working through, your share of the responsibility towards the war, the aggression of the country where you come from, but there's also the question, what kind of knowledge can you contribute in the West, which the West doesn't already know, right? Because, obviously you can be counted for, staging the same kind of art that you have been doing. And Dimitri already is cited nicely, is as if you had one leg cut, because, for all the years of all this hard work of putting into, put into creating the space where, nothing is safe, but you still manage to sustain, to have it just so that people can nurture their consciousness. But all of this is not necessary in Germany, because that's exactly the sort of thing that's expected of you. And that's exactly what is celebrated. So it's almost a sort of very strange contradiction. And therefore, really, what can you contribute which the West doesn't already know is the crucial question. And from my perspective, I think a curious intellectual realignment is happening a lot in Russian-speaking or former Soviet Union spaces. I think you have many of the left moving in. Essentially moving into a left liberal or liberal positions. You have people critical of the Western hegemony, essentially basically conceding that, they were wrong, and realigning themselves to with the West. There's a lot of that going on, which for anyone, for any intellectual worthy of the name, these are very deep sort of personal reckonings that happen with your with the social context, with the education, with what you hold to be true. I think some of that could definitely be interesting to surface, not least because the Western New Left has become something of a caricature of itself in the wake of the war. So there's that. And I also like to mention some of the conversations that I've observed in Central Asia. They have managed formally to decolonize themselves or ejected themselves out of the Soviet Union, however you want to call it. Now, In Central Asia, you have you have a full spectrum of different kinds of opinions. You have, people ethnically Ukrainian, who are anti-war, but who are still pro-Russian as a language. You have any number of decolonial thinkers around the school of Medina Lostanova. Yeah, and you have eco-activists when working on eco-activism, and then just by mentioning that back in the Soviet days, everybody was traveling on trams and not on cars, she would be met with very polarizing reactions, because some people will be saying that you're a Soviet apologist. And then you have old Leninists, and you have people proclaiming that back when Genghis Khan was in our country, that's the greatest time of our country. I mean, in Central Asia, you can still have these kind of debates. I mean, with a lot of alcohol, with a lot of football and all of this, and such discussions are not happening in Europe, right? So I'm just pointing out some of the things I've observed, which I think will be important as instances of this intellectual realignment, and as an instance of what else can you offer which Europe doesn't already know.
Thank you. First of all, I would rather be more careful when we talk about the generalized West, and especially from whatever we call Russian cultural perspective. Because I think the history of Russian Empire and works in the Russian language done in that emancipatory cultural field are part of the general kind of international, European and global discourse, like, Marx about how world literature is happening. What is, right now, I'm really annoyed when people speak about that. Oh my God, this is Russian, this is West, because what is Russian? So when I'm saying what I'm true to the tradition of Russian emancipatory struggle, to Kropotkin, Bakunin, Lenin, Trotsky, Tolstoy as the most kind of manifestation of peace, and that actually harsh critique of militarism and Russian colonialism, that where you're located. And then you immediately link, okay, who is Brecht? Brecht, for example, for us was always kind of Soviet author, he was really so much influential. Who is Benjamin? And so on. So you have to really differentiate. And then you come to that kind of incredible complexities right now, because actually it was important what you say, observation of that debates of that people who emigrated from or flew away from Russia recently last year, and how they settle in Middle Asia. Unfortunately, I haven't been there. I was in Yerevan. We were in Yerevan. I think it's a bit different situation, but at the same time, let's be clear, it's about handful. I mean, it's very limited number of people. So I know this community of the colonial translocal feminists. So I would say in whole Russia, unfortunately, it was maybe less than 200 people who right now, mostly 90% of them gone, That was also interesting how Russian, or whatever Russian life, cultural life in Russia was always based on scarcity. You come to the West, it's abundance of everything, You have this, you have that, you have thousands of feminists of different color, then you have another Trotskyist, maybe Fourth International, not just 4 people like in Russia, but maybe 400, maybe, I don't know, maybe 4,000. Yeah, that's why it's really very special kind of situation to speak from that position of scarcity, but at the same time, it's also very interesting observation that doesn't matter if it's 100,000 of people, maybe 3 voices are really close to you and important, or you have seen of maybe 12 people and also 3 voices are super important and have certain kind of appealing and kind of quality for you personally, and then maybe for bigger community. what we can bring here, like, you know, it's saying, yeah, it's too pathetic. What you bring, like a message or like a messiah. So be careful. That's super dangerous situation. That for me right now, we're watching how life trying to pretend like after COVID going as normal as nothing happened. It's a lot of things happen. That's why sometimes, you know, it's very difficult to watch how people are really still, not everyone, but most of society pretends that things like climate catastrophe, the wars, and so many dangers can be resolved without any efforts. Maybe government will come, maybe aliens. I don't know what they think about. But same time, that pretentiousness that, okay, let's leave. Olga made a very, actually, first time I heard your very good observation that document was kind of created like catastrophe already happened. And right now we can celebrate that survivance. So we survived, and it's beautiful, absolutely. But at the same time, I'm not sure, actually, for me. Yeah, maybe we also have that kind of whatever we call intellectual discussion, because it looks like that catastrophe unstoppable, and maybe make step ahead what to do after catastrophe. But at the same time, it can be really very unclear what kind of, who survived, what kind of wars will come, epidemic, and so on. It's difficult, but at the same time, I agree with Olga, because actually coming back to the start, what we teach in our school, we trying to teach that kind of collective practices, which also we have discussion, I think, yesterday at the table. So some people say that it's very kind of trendy right now to work in collectives, that young people build collective. I'm not sure. Maximum music bands. Music bands, yes, sure. You need guitar, drum, and, you know, piano, and then you can do something. But at the same time, in that kind of interdisciplinary artistic collective, that I see not much, and they're also short-lived. So just one project, maybe two projects, but duration really means a lot. So right now we are speaking with 20 years history behind, and I won't say that less not count. Yeah, of course, every attempt is very important, but at the same time, it creates completely another kind of accumulation of knowledge, of sharing, of relations, which is also super important, and care. So I think that also that generational factor in education is super important. It can be abused more than often, but at the same time, it can be used for the profit, because all the people, so we are not old enough right now, I feel, maybe we'll die before, but at the same time, you see that these people can reach certain kind of knowledge, which could be really important. Yeah.
Yeah. I was also reminded of your comment yesterday on Nora's lecture, where you kind of voiced the uneasiness or a simple discrepancy, let's say, of the sort of reality and the sort of urgency that you experience because of it, you know, you come from a fragment of the world where things are really not okay. So I think we also have to really accept that the world is multipolar, and multipolarity actually doesn't even capture the complexity of the world that we're living in. And the art world, and that would also be my uneasiness with the last documenta, I think the art world is still living in the residue of peak globalization. It is as if, you know, a lot of the problems are commendable, and that everybody have pretty much set opinions about each other and already know the answer. So maybe to shake things up a little bit, I heard the mention of neoliberalism many times yesterday, and I like to beg for a clear definition of neoliberalism. What are we actually talking about? Are we talking about trade liberalization? And if you look at the history of trade liberalization, it's been nothing but easy. You know, in the 60s, towards the end of the 60s, nobody knew who Milton Friedman was. The sentiment of the time was still protectionism. Keynesian economics, Friedman was nobody. And well until the 70s, protectionism was in high currencies. And actually when Nixon decoupled the US dollars from gold, the gold standard, it was actually a nationalist act for the protection of national economy. So when we say neoliberalism, well into the 80s even, it was neoliberalism at home and not free trade internationally. And then came the WTO in the 90s, primarily because the Europeans wanting to get the Americans to be more multilateral. And then we had basically less than 2 decades of globalization, peaking at 2008. The illusion of that, I think, is still felt in the art world because the art world is the most mobile, the most global in its composition and in its ambition of understanding. But the rest of the world has moved somewhere else. And certainly we're not at the point of the neoliberal Washington consensus anymore. So are we talking about financial capitalism? Financial capitalism in the design of derivatives is deeply anti-neoliberal. It is a risk averseness that would get Hayek to say this is not neoliberal. Are we talking about state intervention? Are we talking about state ownership? In the West, there's a general consensus that when the state is back is great. Everybody probably has read or is aware of this Thomas Piketty's book, big book on the capital, where he of course scores a lot of really good points. But when you ask a clear-headed global South economist, they will say, you know, this is very much a Western perspective on things, because there are two kinds of lefts in the world. For the left in the West, it is their mission to protect the workers' rights, to be anti-global and all of that. But for the left elsewhere, they should actually celebrate globalization, because that's the only way they can actually get any kind of system reform going. You know, speaking for more democracy, better institutions, and all of this. So some of these are fundamental realities for many of the people who do not just practice a sort of left-wing politics in the West, but actually look at realities elsewhere. So yeah, so I guess how does the art world, which professes to be global and have a lot of set opinions on a lot of things, deal with this deeply fragmenting and multipolar and complex world is a question that I would like to ask. It's not that I have an answer, but I think we are living the realities as, you know, as Chto Delat or as myself, moving in between various Asian spaces and Europe. Yeah, do you guys want to respond on that?
It's hard to respond. So I absolutely agree. It's actually with your genealogy of neoliberalism, but maybe it was with my comment to yesterday to Nora that actually that right now we have not completely, but you know, with more complex threats to our lives and our visions, not just neoliberalism, because it's also present, but right now it's a lot of that multipolar world. So for example, in Russia right now, there is very good discussion about feudalism, that Russia actually was coming back into that kind, and especially, you know, also was maybe, I'm sorry, like following your speculation on that kind of geopolitical, economical things, you know, when beginning of that war, in intensification of the war in February, that was most heaviest sanction imposed on Russia, you know, and we all, like maybe other economists who invented this sanction, imagine that in 2 months Russian economy will collapse. You know, 1.5 years passed, we have connection to Russian, and you know, maybe from a newspaper report that nothing collapsed. it's functioning quite well, in a lot of the shadow economies through Iran, China, India, it's completely another kind of web of globalization, not globalization, world cooperation, and that was really, I don't know, maybe it will collapse, but how it will work, borders closed, sanction, full BDS at highest level, so to say. Yeah, and in the real, so bank system, SWIFT. I remember that people talk, if Russia cut out from SWIFT, how you call it, SWIFT, then everything collapsed, everything working. The banks doing best profit ever. And I, frankly to say, couldn't research it deep, but looks like it's not just me puzzling what's going on, and also it's how it affects military production. But back to the production of knowledge, it really affects a lot. So people completely cut off any kind of international communication. There are no cultural events. All institutions stop activity, from cultural centers, which we can criticize before for colonial politics. Right now, no colonial politics because they shut down all activities, from Sweden to Norway to US to whatever. They simply fired people and that's it. We can ask Maria Lind, hopefully she will come. Yeah, she knows it better from inside, but that's reality. And then there's people who move to another places where their bank accounts completely blocked. There is very difficult to transfer money. People use it, whatever we call that Muslim banking system. So you call by telephone, I'll give you 100 rubles here and you give me 100 rubles in UK in pounds, something like that. So okay, I agree. So you get there, you get there. That's banking for normal people is working. But if you need billions, it's working pretty well. You pay for gas, you pay for oil, or you can pay for drones. I don't know how it works. So, but effect on cultural situations very dramatic, and also for us, back to school of emergency, it's also one of that kind of issue. That's why we can quite easily understand when we talk with the people from that kind of repressive regime, like when we meet people from Turkey, when we meet people from Iran, when we meet people from China or maybe Hong Kong right now. So we immediately understand what does it mean to survive in that kind of new composition of borders, limitations, visas, Lebanon also. Yeah, that's exactly. Oh, I think Nick would like us to stop. No?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, questions. Should I try to? Okay, let's.
Maybe you leave this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually. Yeah. So, yeah, first of all, I mean, I think that your work is really very important, and I mean, somehow I can only say that I am personally very happy that you are in Hamburg in the moment, and that I hope that from what you bring, something can go on. My question is related actually to this point, because however we want to see it and however we want to call it, I am still not sure if the idea of consciousness and political subjectivity in education on the one hand and an entrance exam is not a contradiction in itself. And this is what I was talking about yesterday. And in somehow, this is what I call the economization of education and what I call in education neoliberalism. So my question to you, I remember in 2014, when we met in St. Petersburg, for you, it was clear that you would have entrance assessment for people who can join or not your school. How is it now and how do you see it?
I'm not sure if I get, you mean entrance exam, kind of evaluation,
If
criteria?
someone wants to join your
Yeah.
school,
Yeah.
is it possible for everyone or do you decide and by what means?
You'd like to say?
Oh,
Our best problem was that we really, everyone can join us. And sometimes it was pretty difficult because sometimes it was too many people who wanted, but for us to choose who is better, who is, no, I mean, motivation letter. Sometimes, yeah, only motivation letter. And this is why I guess that everyone can join.
But at the same time, you know, actually in that case, because again, I remind you that we are speaking about micro initiatives. So, I mean, for you comparison, maybe you can just international one, Ashkal Alvan, okay, East School of London, yeah, more or less similar, 1 year course, 2 semesters, mentorship, guest lectures, and special focuses for us, for example, collectivity and performative bodies. That was the main thing. And also political relations, so that kind of basic. But when you put that kind of open call, it's actually open call brings a lot of filter. So, and actually those who can respond, they have to come through this filter. That's why actually I don't agree with Olga. We never had many applicants because actually it was already limited. You have shared certain affiliation. Then you should also understand our position in Russian hierarchy in art. So you can have exhibition at MoMA, but at the same time in Russia, you're nobody because you're doing quite weird things, which is not acceptable, which always risky with censorship. So you almost have zero relation to institutional art world in Russia, which was formed after 2014, and Manifesto was part of it. So, yeah, but at the same time, I think that it's kind of very interesting. So you make kind of very democratic, very open call, but at the same time, you feel that it's really addressed like-minded people, so those who already may be ready, but at the same time we saw that sometimes people who wrote very weird application motivation letter, they was the best. So they were, I've never heard about, I've never read Benjamin, I don't know your work, but I feel like I should be there, and we took it. Yeah. And sometimes these people really became the best.
Of course, yeah, but people who overcame all of these filters, yeah, they're all of them were very welcome. Yeah.
Ooh, but you mean that, of course, we, for example, we communicate the schools through social media. So you can't say, I will wait you in the park at the tree, oak tree, close to the exit or entrance. So who will come? So of course you make a different kind of publication. For example, we make public presentation of many of our teachers, public lectures. So we have actually very intense, especially when we used to have House of Culture. It was maybe one event a day, each day. On weekend, maybe 2-3 events. At night also, you know, it was, the doors were open. But at the same time, again, as we said, for example, when you have certain kind of activity, in particular with the war, it became very explicit. So you can't really open up right now. It's a big problem for many of that intellectual activities, because for those who in Russia, or maybe those who have relatives in Russia, it's impossible even to mention the name. You know, it's really close kind of Telegram channel, ciphered communication, erased after 5 minutes. So it's a lot of that stuff. So I don't know, but same time, I'm also quite skeptical about, like was yesterday, commons without commoning. So I mean, you have to be really clean on protocols, and it's not necessary that economization. The protocols also have that inclusion and exclusion, it's political decision. So it's like engagement, you know, you can't say I'm open to everyone. So for me, it's also quite a little bit hypocritical even, you know, because you are not open, because there are always filters. There is always that certain kind of chimie, personal communication. That's why you have to be really clear on what protocol people accepted, how they not exploited, either through assembly or through kind of tuition, you know. You have to be really clean about that, okay, guys, this protocol. So for example, right now we are doing Stefan is here. I hope it's already public, or at least inside of HFBK. We're doing summer school. So School of Emergency doing collaboration with HFBK for 2 weeks summer school, and we published open call, which I also think has a lot of filters. So you participate on that condition. At the end, it will be something like that, which under Creative Commons license. So it's not our product. Everyone can use it. So it's publicly accessible. So that for us important. We are not using kind of educational program for our own artistic work. So for us, it's a very clear separation that right now it's so many kind of misuse or exploitation. So you have to be careful.
Dimitri, I actually have a question. For all three of you or the room, I think there's kind of a, it was interesting to hear me clinch onto this word of neoliberalism, but I also kind of want to interject with, we have yet to kind of define what education means in this context. And I would say just in a very simple sense of the idea of education as a certain kind of social reproduction, we know in Germany, okay, if you go to an art school as an artist to become an artist, you're put into a system of discourse which includes a market of ideas, e.g. this place right here, Kunstverein. There is a context in which you can become an artist, in which you have a discourse, context, an audience. I'm kind of interested to think about what happens when we don't have this whole infrastructure, which, for instance, in Germany, we have a huge infrastructure of context and discourse. What does it mean in a multipolar world, for instance, me, to want to be an artist and to be somewhere where this doesn't exist? So in a way, I see your school, in a way, as one strategy, not exactly a social reproduction, but a strategy in order to produce a context. The school is not only something that reproduces a situation or a system, but something that is also in and of itself a social situation where artists have a discourse, artists have people to talk to. And I want to get back to the object here, which is art. What is the artist's position here if we're talking about education and this multipolar world? What is a young artist going into a school of any of these kinds? What are they trying to get? And what is the education here? You know, is the education a means to enter the market in Europe, for instance, to go to Art Basel, to be in a Kunstverein, or is it to have a conversation with peers in another kind of way?
Yeah. I mean, I think actually, you know, I think we should answer both. So in places where this sort of welfare state support structure doesn't exist and where it does exist, I mean, I think the question applies to both contexts. Now, I start with where it doesn't exist. Documenta is actually Documenta 15 is the prime example, because you see exactly how the quote unquote global south collectives managing a very different kinds or sources of funding, right? So from the government, which they may or may not agree with private funders, with foreign donors, each implying a very different kind of tactic, but they play it quite well, right? And that's unfortunately the thing that we discussed very little at the last Documenta. And I've said it quite clearly. I'm not like, don't take the money. I think my policy is like, take the money, but be very careful about, be very clear and articulate about your politics and what is implied in that. So from there, you already see a bit of a more three-dimensional, more complex relation to the sort of false dichotomy of the autonomy of art and then the sort of instrumentality of art. I mean, first of all, you know, the instrumentality only exists because of the autonomy, and it's a very dialectic relation. And second of all, just because artists can be instrumentalized, you know, to provide certain social services in this broadly neoliberal, in a very local sense, neoliberal deregulation and defunding of public services. So artists do get asked to perform certain, you know, communal services and things like that. But just because this happens doesn't mean that art doesn't actually have a social function and social value, right? So the inverse logic doesn't apply. So I would say, you know, for these people working in this part of the world, don't be so stuck in this sort of false dichotomy, but actually learn the language and understand what is at stake. Try not to de-represent yourself from the important issues, and really get other skills. And back to art education, get other skills, understanding how organizational work works, how to not just you know, organize within the art school, but also how to interface that with, you know, labor struggles. Again, Western playbook. I mean, we've had, as Documented Institute, we've had this very nice collaboration with the Transnational School of Mobile Migrant Workers, where we basically work with writers from Gorilla and Lieferando and all of this, and cheap airline attendants and all of this. Yeah, and get, you know, basic literacy, systemic literacy in economics, in geopolitics, and a lot of those other things. I think that would be my answer to the art education question.
Nikolai Aleynikov is here.
Reunion. 1 year after.
As I am myself part of Chto Delat and our school, I have a little kind of answer to that, to this question, which is very important question on what kind of, what is the desire for the people who participate into our school. And I want to underline one important thing, that it's not only the artist or young artist or the artists to become who are coming into our school to participate. There are also people who are just interested in sort of educational practices that are correlated to the politics. Sometimes those people who participate are just coming from the political background, from the grassroots politics. And it doesn't matter, and it's not really necessary if they want to uplift their skills in art making, but the situation that is created within the school and around the school is to actually making an intersectional and intergenerational connection. So basically the school doesn't produce artists per se. The school produces the situation in the city. And as Jonathan Brooks Platt was saying in his observation of our early years of the school, he was saying Chto Delat is actually creating a public, not the producers, not the future biennial artists, which might be possible that some of our participants that become our family in a very profound ways, they would participate to the exhibitions, they would create their own path in the artistic career or whatever, but it's not the goal, it's not the target, it's not necessary. And yeah, I think that's one important shift that for our school is important. And fortunately here we have several representatives who participated in our school in many ways, so maybe it's better to ask even them. Yes.
Zoya, Misha. Zoya is a teacher, yeah. Yeah, but in our school, I mean, teacher, tutors, participants, all of our participants. Ah, sorry, yeah, sorry.
Yes, I have a question. Just on the role of institutions, because you know, I can say my generation, especially in Germany, we beginning with Trump and all this new crazy right wing, and then of course Corona and so on, we somehow found us in a situation where we actually defended institutions and very often the same institutions which we fought like 20 years before. So there's a sort of like Ratlosigkeit, as I don't know how to translate this. At the same time, you can say there are several threats on institutions. The one thing is, of course, all this violence, corruption, and so on, which is more or less ruling the world now. But on the other side, it's also, as you mentioned, social media. It's also, of course, well, let's just call it the algorithms and so on. Everything, all this sort of like automatized ideology, which is not really ideology in the old sense, but it's somehow something else, which I could say I don't really understand till now. And as you were talking about, so my question would be first, because what is actually good about institutions is that they're sort of like independent from the people who run them, or they should be. They could be, perhaps, because there's something in the institutions which is as a structure and whatever. So my question would be both. So what is your now? What is your specific strategy and your view on institution now in this sort of like post-institutional times? And then at the same time, what is your strategy on building something which goes on after you are, and as we in Germany always say, wohlverdienter Ruhestand, which is independent from your persons and so on.
Thank you, Peter. I don't know, it's really complicated issue, but at the same time, maybe, you know, to reduce it into that kind of political economic kind of language, I think institution, it's means of production, you know, and actually artists or those who work, that maybe not proletariat, but at the same time it's living labor. And for me, when we translate actually very often that issue of autonomy, we translate it from workerist position, that living labor autonomous from capital. It doesn't mean that workers don't work at the factory. That's exactly where they work, where they get subjectivation. But at the same time, we against that idea like totality of the capital. If capital colonized all forms of life, there is nothing to talk about. But actually, in Marx's view, that living labor, that agency of proletariat is autonomous. That's why it has capacity to rebel, to make a revolution and change society. But then it goes into that complexity of relation, what you do at that factory, how your relation to the bosses. Maybe you can take over the factory, like yesterday, that how to common the factory, you know, but how to commonize that means of production. That for us very important issue. That's why that very modest and very kind of minimal stage, like for example, like we working from very beginning on the Creative Commons license. I know many political artists like Style, whoever, who are strongly copyright all that works. You can't see that political films, you know, you can't see political art from big galleries, you know, they're all copyright. And that actually where the basic kind of things, and unfortunately, it's very few artists work under Creative Commons, even if it's not contradict for possibility to sell, like NFT, for example, art shows that what we were pioneering with Creative Commons, it's already in digital sphere, come on. But at the same time, people so afraid of the dictate of the galleries and the dealers, and that is a shame, you know, a complete shame, especially when you work with a kind of digital media like a film, which should be commons, come on. And especially when you use public funds for production, it's even more outrageous, you know, people take money from public and then sell it through the gallery. What's that, you know? And no return to that kind of public sphere. That's what I would say, that if we start to discuss maybe in an old-fashioned way how we understand that means of production, for whose purposes it is, how to commonize it, that would be really another approach. And then you can understand autonomy of living labor, of artistic work in a more kind of free sense. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
No, maybe more question.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you. Maybe we just have.
So can you see and
There's merch. Maybe if we really have a very, very quick break, 2 to 5 minutes. If you need to use the bathroom, get a drink or whatever, and then please join us back for Ghislaine Lung in a moment. Thank you.